If you saw a 6-year-old girl carrying a newborn in the chilly autumn air, collecting bottles to survive, would you stop? Or would you keep driving and hope someone else did? If this moment grips you, consider subscribing so you never miss the rest of this story. The first light of an Asheville autumn morning was thin and pale, spilling across the quiet curves of Pinecrest Avenue. The old oak trees lining the street were letting go of their leaves one by one, crisp reds and yellows drifting lazily toward the cracked sidewalks. Officer Ethan Cole's patrol car rolled slowly along the narrow lane, his window cracked just enough for the cool air to slip in. He liked mornings like this, calm, predictable, the kind where the city still felt like a small town. But this morning was not going to be calm. Somewhere between the hum of the cruiser and the soft whisper of wind, Ethan heard it. So faint he thought at first it might be a bird. It was a cry, but not the sharp wail of pain. This was thin, exhausted, and trembled at the edges. He slowed the car, glancing left and right along the sleepy row of houses. Then he saw her. On the far corner, near a dented green trash bin, a small figure was crouched. She was wearing a faded purple hoodie several sizes too big, sleeves frayed at the cuffs. Strapped to her chest with a worn canvas baby carrier was an infant, head tucked against her collarbone, swaddled in a thin flannel blanket. The girl's hair, dirty blonde and tangled, stuck out in uneven wisps from under her hood. In her free hand, she clutched a plastic grocery bag that sagged with the weight of aluminum cans and plastic bottles. Ethan's heart thudded once, heavy. He braked hard, pulled to the curb, and stepped out. "Hey there," he called gently, careful not to startle her. "Are you okay?" The girl's head snapped up. Her eyes were enormous, green and ringed with the kind of dark circles no child should carry. She didn't answer right away, just hugged the baby closer, shifting the bag to her other hand as if ready to run. "It's all right," Ethan said, lowering himself to one knee so he wasn't towering over her. "I'm Officer Cole. What's your name?" Her lips moved, hesitated. "Lily," she whispered. "Lily Parker." Ethan nodded. "Hi, Lily. And this is your little brother?" She adjusted the baby's head gently. "Noah. He's only 2 weeks old." Ethan's chest tightened. 2 weeks. Outside in 48-degree weather. "Where are your parents, Lily?" Her answer came in a rush, but it wasn't what he expected. "Please don't take him away. I'm taking good care of him." The plea was raw, desperate, years older than her voice. The baby stirred at the sound, releasing a faint cough that was wet and shallow. Ethan leaned closer, his training kicking in. Noah's breathing was irregular, with a faint wheeze between exhales. His lips had a bluish tinge that made alarm bells go off in Ethan's mind. "Lily, I think your brother needs to see a doctor," he said carefully. She shook her head so hard the hood slipped back. No, they'll split us up. They always split people up." Her grip on the baby tightened. Ethan kept his voice low, steady. "I'm not here to split you up. I'm here to make sure both of you are safe. And right now, safe means warm and somewhere inside." Lily bit her lip, torn between fear and exhaustion. Her little fingers were red from the cold, knuckles raw. Ethan stood and glanced at his patrol car, the engine still idling. He'd handled hundreds of calls in his decade on the force, domestics, break-ins, even high-speed chases. But there was something about the sight of this girl on a quiet street, carrying her brother and the weight of survival that felt heavier than all of them. "Tell you what," he said. "How about we sit in my car for a minute? Just to warm up? You can hold Noah the whole time. No one's taking him from you without talking to you first. Deal?" She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. Ethan opened the rear passenger door and held it while Lily climbed in, careful not to jostle the baby. He set her bag of cans on the floor. The moment the heater kicked on, color began to creep back into her cheeks, though her eyes never left him, watchful and wary. As he pulled away from Pinecrest Avenue, Ethan spoke gently. "Do you have a place you stay? Somewhere we can take you?" She shook her head. We were at the Yellow House, but it's not ours anymore. Mom went to Charlotte for work. Dad went to fix a car. He didn't come back." Her voice cracked. "I think they forgot we're here." Ethan felt a slow burn in his chest. Not anger at her parents yet, but at the fragile line between being loved and being left. He reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got 2 minors, female, approximately 6, male infant, possibly abandoned, medical distress for the infant, requesting immediate contact with child services and prep at Mission Hospital Pediatric Intake." "Copy, Unit 12, came the crackled reply. Lily's grip on her brother never loosened. Ethan glanced in the mirror again and caught her reflection, her jaw set, her eyes unblinking, as if daring the world to try and take what little she had left. In that moment, Ethan knew 2 things for certain. Noah's condition needed urgent attention, and whatever had led to these children being alone on Pinecrest Avenue was going to change his day, his week, maybe even his life. The cruiser's tires hummed against the asphalt as they turned toward downtown Asheville, morning traffic just beginning to stir. Somewhere beyond the ridges of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the sun was breaking higher, but for the 3 of them in that car, the day had already split wide open. The Asheville Police Department's emergency intake room was a small, functional space tucked behind the front lobby, a place Ethan had walked into hundreds of times, but never with a 6-year-old clutching an infant to her chest like a lifeline. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their pale glow on a scuffed linoleum floor. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and burnt coffee. Ethan held the door open, letting Lily step in first. She hesitated, glancing around like a wild animal, unsure if it had just been led into a trap. Her small frame was dwarfed by the large, metal-legged chairs lining the wall. Noah stirred in her arms, letting out another soft cough. Ethan closed the door gently, then crouched down so they were eye level. "Remember," he said softly, "you're still holding him. I promised you that." She nodded once, quick and tight. On the far side of the room, a desk phone rang twice before being picked up. The woman behind the desk, Marissa Hall, was already in motion, sliding a stack of intake forms aside as she stood. Marissa had been with Child Protective Services for nearly a decade, and Ethan had worked with her enough to know she was both sharp and compassionate. She was 32, with warm brown skin, shoulder-length curls, and a knack for speaking to children without making them feel like suspects. "What's the situation?" she asked Ethan in a low voice. "Found them on Pinecrest Avenue. Girl's name is Lily Parker, about 6 years old. Infant brother Noah, maybe 2 weeks old. Possible abandonment. The baby's in respiratory distress, already called Mission Hospital to prep." Marissa's eyes softened when they landed on Lily. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm Marissa. Can we sit for a moment while I ask you a couple of questions?" Lily looked to Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod. She perched on the edge of one of the chairs, still holding Noah. Marissa pulled a chair closer and sat down, leaning forward just enough to shrink the gap between them. "Can you tell me where your mom is?" Lily's voice was so faint they had to lean in to hear. "She went to Charlotte to get a job, said she'd be back in 2 days. "And when was that?" Lily's brow furrowed as she counted on her fingers. "A long time ago. Maybe 10 sleeps?" Marissa glanced at Ethan. 10 days. Too long for a newborn to be without consistent care. "And your dad?" Marissa asked. "He went to fix a car for a man. He said it would get us money for food and gas to see Aunt Clara in Savannah. But..." Lily's eyes dropped. He didn't come back either. Ethan felt the familiar, restrained anger that came with cases like this. Not the kind directed at a child's parents in a blanket judgment, but at the reality of how easily children could end up invisible. Noah let out a sharp, wet cough that startled Lily. She adjusted him carefully, rocking slightly. Ethan saw her lips move. She was whispering something to him, a mantra she must have repeated countless times. Marissa's voice was steady but urgent. "Ethan, we need to get them to Mission now. We'll finish the intake there, but I'll log the initial data here for the emergency intake record." Ethan nodded, but before moving, he crouched again in front of Lily. "We're going to the hospital now. I'll drive. Marissa will come too. You'll still have Noah with you. Okay?" For the first time since he'd found her, Lily's gaze shifted to Marissa instead of locking on Ethan. "Will there be people who try to take him?" Marissa's answer was honest. "There will be doctors and nurses who need to check on him. But you can be right there the whole time." Lily hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Marissa quickly filled out the emergency intake form, fields for the children's names, apparent ages, current condition, and a brief narrative. Found by APD Officer Cole at 07:20 hours, Pinecrest Avenue. No parents present. Infant exhibiting respiratory distress and cyanosis of the lips. Transporting to Mission Hospital Pediatric Emergency. Before leaving, Ethan signed off on the officer's section. It was procedural, but it also served as a timestamp that would later matter in court if custody became contested. As they moved toward the door, the front desk phone rang again. Marissa paused to grab the receiver, holding it to her ear for a moment before her eyes flicked toward Ethan. "It's dispatch," she said. "They're flagging a possible address match from DMV records for a Mark Parker in Greenville, South Carolina. Male, mid-30s. Last known occupation, auto mechanic. They're sending over shelter leads." Ethan absorbed that, but kept his focus on getting the kids moving. "Let's get them to Mission first. We can follow that thread later." The patrol car ride to Mission Hospital was quiet except for the low hum of the heater and Noah's occasional coughs. Marissa sat in the back beside Lily, keeping her voice soft, asking small, grounding questions about Lily's favorite food, whether she liked to draw, what color she thought the sky looked like today. Ethan noticed the way Lily's shoulders eased just slightly, though she never loosened her hold on her brother. At the hospital's pediatric intake entrance, a nurse in light blue scrubs was already waiting with a wheelchair modified for infants and small children. "Pediatric ICU has a room prepped," she told them. "We'll monitor oxygen saturation and start warm IV fluids right away." Lily stiffened at the sight of the nurse reaching for Noah, but Ethan knelt beside her. "They just want to help him breathe better, Lily. You'll walk with them, okay?" She bit her lip, then stood and followed as the nurse wheeled the chair down the hall. Marissa stayed back with Ethan for a moment. "We'll need to start the CPS emergency custody process if no parent or legal guardian can be reached within the next 12 hours, she said. "I know," Ethan replied, "but let's hope we can track one down before it comes to that." Back in the intake room earlier that morning, Lily had looked like she was braced for interrogation. Now, walking alongside the nurse, she looked more like a little girl again, still frightened, but carrying a sliver of hope that maybe someone was finally listening. For Ethan, that was enough to keep moving. But he knew the real work, finding the truth, getting these kids safe, was only beginning. The automatic doors of Mission Hospital's pediatric wing slid open with a soft hiss, releasing a wave of sterile air tinged with the faint sweetness of hand sanitizer. Ethan kept his pace even, though his instincts told him to move faster. Lily was walking right beside the nurse who pushed the small wheelchair carrying Noah. The flannel blanket she had wrapped him in looked even thinner under the bright fluorescent lights, its faded checks a poor match for the icy autumn air they had just left behind. Inside, the pediatric intensive care unit was quiet in the way only hospitals could be. No silence, but a collection of purposeful sounds. A heart monitor's steady beep from a nearby room. The soft shuffle of nurses' sneakers on polished floors. A baby's brief cry, quickly soothed. Dr. Emily Rhodes stepped out from behind the nurses' station, already in motion before Ethan could introduce himself. She was in her early 40s, her blonde hair tucked into a loose bun, a stethoscope slung around her neck like it belonged there. Her presence was calm but decisive, the kind of demeanor you wanted when seconds mattered. "You're Officer Cole?" she asked, without slowing her approach. "That's me. These are Lily and her brother Noah. Found them outside this morning. He's showing signs of respiratory distress, possible dehydration and malnutrition." Emily's eyes softened just slightly at Lily before she crouched down to the infant's level. "Hi there, buddy. Let's get you feeling better, okay?" She turned to the nurse. "Vitals first, oxygen saturation, respiratory rate, temperature." "Start a nasal cannula at 1 liter per minute if SpO2 is under 92. Lily stiffened when the nurse reached for Noah, her hands tightening around the straps of the baby carrier. Ethan stepped forward, crouching so he was level with her. "They're going to help him breathe, Lily. You'll be right there the whole time. You can even help if you want." That seemed to sway her. She slowly unbuckled the carrier, her hands gentle but trembling. The nurse lifted Noah with practiced care, settling him on a warmed examination table. His small chest rose and fell rapidly, each breath shallow and effortful. Emily slid the pulse oximeter over his tiny foot, the monitor lighting up almost immediately. 89% oxygen saturation, she murmured. "Let's start that cannula now." The nurse moved quickly, looping the clear tubing over Noah's ears, adjusting the soft prongs just inside his nostrils. The monitor began to climb slowly, 90, 91, 93. While another nurse began preparing a pediatric IV, Emily turned to Ethan and Marissa, who had just arrived from the parking garage. "He's got mild pneumonia, judging from the wet cough and lung sounds, probably exacerbated by dehydration and calorie deficiency. We'll start antibiotics, ampicillin for broad coverage, and IV fluids with electrolytes. He's also showing early signs of failure to thrive." Lily's brow furrowed. "What's that mean?" Emily softened her tone. "It means he hasn't been getting enough food to grow the way he should. We're going to fix that, Lily. We'll help him get strong." The little girl's eyes darted between the doctor and her brother, still trying to decide whether to believe the promise. As the IV line slid into place, Noah whimpered, a thin, tired sound. Lily instinctively reached for his hand, holding it between both of hers. "It's okay, Noah," she whispered. "I saved the biggest piece of bread for you yesterday." That made Ethan glance at Marissa. The unspoken truth was clear. Lily had been going without food so Noah could have more. Emily, still listening to Noah's chest, glanced over at Ethan. "If she's been rationing her own food like that, we'll need to run labs on her too. CBC, metabolic panel, maybe a vitamin D level. Kids can hide malnutrition better than infants, but it catches up fast." Ethan nodded. "Do what you need to do." Once the IV was running and antibiotics were ordered, Emily gave the nurses a series of instructions that sounded almost like a checklist for a NASA launch. Fluid bolus rate, oxygen flow adjustments, temperature monitoring. Everything was delivered in precise medical terms, nothing wasted. Then she turned her attention to Lily. "Would you like to come see where Noah will be staying while we help him get better?" Lily's voice was small. "Can I sleep there too?" Emily hesitated for just a fraction before answering. "You can sit with him as much as you want while you're awake. At night, we'll make sure you have a safe place to sleep nearby." They wheeled Noah to a private glass-walled room. The crib looked more like a high-tech bassinet, surrounded by softly beeping machines. The sunlight streaming through the east-facing window painted the floor in pale gold. a warm contrast to the clinical white walls. As the nurses settled Noah in, Lily hovered at the edge of the crib, her fingers resting on the rail. Ethan stayed in the doorway, giving her space but making sure she could see he hadn't left. Marissa took out her CPS-issued tablet, opening the emergency intake medical form. "Dr. Rhodes, can you document the current medical status and probable cause?" Emily nodded, dictating as she worked. "Male infant, 2 weeks old, presented with mild pneumonia, dehydration, moderate malnutrition. Probable cause: prolonged exposure to low temperatures, inadequate caloric intake. Immediate risk mitigated by current treatment. Prognosis: good with continued care." Lily looked over her shoulder. "What's prognosis?" Emily smiled faintly. "It means I think he's going to get better." For the first time that day, a flicker of relief passed over Lily's face. Ethan stepped closer. "Lily, can you tell me more about the yellow house you mentioned earlier?" Her eyes lit up just a little. "It's on Hawthorne Street. Big oak tree in the yard. Looks like a dinosaur if you stand just right. Mom said we'd live there forever." She paused, frowning. "But then the mailbox got taken away, and the man in the blue jacket told us we couldn't go inside anymore. Do you remember if Mom left anything there?" Lily nodded. "She hid a box under the step. Said it was for if we ever got lost." Ethan exchanged a glance with Marissa. This could be their first concrete lead. As the morning shifted into early afternoon, Noah's breathing eased slightly under the steady hiss of oxygen. The monitors beeped with reassuring regularity. Emily's team moved in quiet coordination, checking vitals, adjusting drips, making notes on the electronic chart. Lily sat in the chair beside the crib, one hand curled through the bars so her fingers touched her brother's. She looked smaller than ever in the oversized hoodie, but there was a steadiness in the way she sat, like she'd decided this was her post, and she wasn't leaving until he was safe. Ethan knew that in the hours ahead, they'd have to follow the trail to the yellow house, track down the parents, and face whatever truth waited there. But for now, in this room filled with the quiet hum of machines and the stubborn loyalty of a 6-year-old sister, the first part of the mission was clear: keep these kids alive, together, and believing that someone was fighting for them. The autumn sun had shifted westward by the time Ethan's cruiser turned off Patton Avenue and wound its way into the quieter residential grid of East Asheville. Hawthorne Street was the kind of place where time seemed to move slower, lined with modest mid-century homes, each with its own quirks: peeling paint, a porch swing, a bicycle left leaning against a tree. Ethan had been here before on other calls, noise complaints, a couple of welfare checks, but this was different. In the passenger seat, Marissa scrolled through property records on her CPS-issued tablet. "Yellow house at 228 Hawthorne," she said, tapping the screen. "Last listed owner was a Sarah Parker. But," she swiped again, "the bank repossessed it 3 months ago. No current registered tenant." Ethan slowed the car as they approached. The yellow paint had faded into a tired, patchy mustard, and the once bright shutters hung crooked. The lawn was overrun with knee-high weeds. The mailbox post stood bare where the box had been removed. But it was the oak tree that caught his attention immediately. It was massive, easily older than the house itself, with a trunk wide enough that 3 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. Its lowest branch arched outward before curling skyward like the neck of some prehistoric creature. Lily's dinosaur tree description suddenly made perfect sense. He pulled to the curb, the cruiser's tires crunching over a scattering of acorns. The air here smelled faintly of damp earth and decaying leaves. "You ready?" he asked Marissa. She nodded, tucking her tablet under one arm. "Let's find that box." The front steps sagged slightly under their weight as they climbed onto the small porch. A foreclosure notice was still taped to the door, edges curling from weather exposure. Ethan crouched, running his hand along the underside of the top step. The wood was cool and slightly damp, but solid. He felt along each edge until his fingers brushed something metallic, small hinges, barely visible in the shadow. "Got something," he murmured. Using his pocket knife, he eased open the thin wooden panel. Inside was a small, dented tin box, the kind that might have once held tea or cookies. It was surprisingly heavy for its size. He carried it to the porch rail and flipped the latch. Inside, wrapped in a folded grocery bag, was a stack of items. A handwritten letter in blue ink addressed "To my babies," a small envelope containing what looked like a bus ticket stub, and a pay stub from a diner in Charlotte dated just over a month ago. A printed photo of Lily, maybe 4 years old, standing in front of the same yellow house, grinning with a popsicle in hand. And, tucked at the very bottom, a lined index card with "Clara Reynolds, Savannah, GA," written in careful block letters, followed by an address and a phone number. Marissa exhaled slowly. This confirms what Lily told us about her aunt. She turned the letter over in her hands. Should we read it now? Ethan hesitated. It's addressed to the kids, but if it contains information about their safety, we may need to. Marissa unfolded the letter carefully. The handwriting was a little uneven, as if written in a rush. My sweet Lily and Noah, if you are reading this, it means I couldn't get back to you as soon as I promised. I'm in Charlotte, working double shifts to save enough for gas to take you to Aunt Clara's in Savannah. She will keep you safe if I can't. Please trust her. Take care of each other. Lily, you're the best big sister in the world. Love always. Mom. Marissa's voice softened as she read the last line. She wasn't abandoning them. She was trying to get them somewhere safe. Ethan closed the tin box, jaw tightening. Intent doesn't erase the fact that they were left without adult care for days, but it changes the picture. They circled the house, noting other details. A back door padlocked from the outside, a tipped-over trash can, a few toys scattered in the overgrown grass. No sign of forced entry. Likely the bank's security crew had locked it up after repossession. As they made their way back to the car, Marissa's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Mission Hospital. It's Dr. Rhodes. She answered on speaker. Marissa Hall. Emily's voice came through, brisk but steady. Noah's responding well to antibiotics. Oxygen saturation is up to 97. But I wanted to let you know Lily's labs came back showing mild anemia and vitamin D deficiency. She'll need nutritional support, too. Marissa shot Ethan a look. We'll be back soon. We found the box under the step Lily mentioned. It had contact info for her aunt. That's good news, Emily replied. The sooner those kids have stable family, the better. After hanging up, they both sat in the car for a moment, the weight of the discovery settling between them. The address in Savannah was a 5-hour drive, doable for someone determined to help, but impossible for a 6-year-old. Ethan tapped the steering wheel lightly. We'll call Clara tonight, but I want to try to locate the father first. If he's in Greenville, we can at least get his side before this becomes a pure custody fight. Marissa agreed. And if he's not in a condition to parent, Clara might be the safest interim placement. Before leaving, Ethan took one last look at the yellow house through the windshield. It wasn't much, but it was the image Lily carried in her head when she thought of home. And that made it matter. As they drove back toward downtown, the late afternoon light washed the street in a warm gold, catching the leaves as they tumbled from the dinosaur oak. The house shrank in the rearview mirror, but Ethan knew it would loom large in the story to come. The sky above Asheville had already deepened into that hazy shade between late afternoon and evening by the time Ethan and Marissa pulled into the parking lot behind the Asheville Police Department. The golden light of the day's end glinted off windshields, casting long shadows over the asphalt. Ethan shut off the engine, but neither of them moved right away. The tin box from the yellow house sat on the dashboard between them, the letter inside feeling heavier than any piece of paper should. Marissa was the first to break the silence. If we're going to reach Clara tonight, it should be now. The letter says she's in Savannah, but we don't know if she's moved or changed numbers. Ethan nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Let's call from your CPS line. It'll carry more weight if she hears it's an official matter. Inside the building, they slipped into one of the small, glass-walled conference rooms. Marissa set her tablet on the table, pulled out her phone, and dialed the number from the index card. Ethan leaned against the wall, arms folded, listening as the line began to ring. It picked up on the fourth ring. Hello? The voice was female, slightly husky, with the faintest lilt of a southern accent. Ms. Reynolds? Marissa's voice was calm but carried an undertone of urgency. My name is Marissa Hall. I'm a social worker with Buncombe County Child Protective Services in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm calling regarding your niece and nephew, Lily and Noah Parker. There was a pause on the line, a pause long enough that Ethan could almost hear the gears turning on the other end. Then the woman's voice came back, sharper now. My babies? Where are they? Is something wrong? They're safe, Marissa assured her. They're currently in the care of Officer Ethan Cole here at the Asheville Police Department and are receiving medical attention at Mission Hospital. We located them this morning in a situation where they were without adult supervision. A sharp inhale crackled through the speaker. Without? But Sarah calls me every week. Every week, until... Clara's voice faltered. I haven't heard from her in almost a month. I thought maybe she was just between jobs again. Marissa glanced at Ethan before continuing. We have reason to believe Sarah traveled to Charlotte for work, but we've been unable to confirm her location. The children told us she intended to bring them to you in Savannah. That's true, Clara said quickly. She called me 2 months ago, said she was saving for gas money to drive them down. I told her I'd help, but she's proud, you know, didn't want to accept it. Her voice broke. I had no idea they were alone. Ethan stepped closer to the table so Clara could hear him clearly. Ms. Reynolds, I need to ask you directly. Are you willing and able to take custody of Lily and Noah immediately if needed? Willing? Clara's voice rose. I'll get in my car tonight if I have to. I've got a room ready for them. 2 rooms, actually. I need to know they're okay. Marissa's eyes met Ethan's. If you can come tonight, that may be the best course. But I have to be clear. There will be a formal process. Temporary custody can be granted to you if the court deems it in the children's best interest, but you'll have to appear before a judge here in Buncombe County. I'll do whatever it takes, Clara said firmly. How far am I from you? Ethan answered. About 5 hours, depending on traffic. If you leave within the hour, you could be here around midnight. I can arrange for an officer to meet you and escort you to the hospital. I'll be on the road in 30 minutes, she said, no hesitation in her voice. When the call ended, Marissa let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. That's the best possible outcome we could have hoped for tonight. She sounds stable, prepared, committed. Ethan agreed, though a part of him still weighed the unanswered questions. Where was Sarah now? And what about the father in Greenville? By the time they reached Mission Hospital again, the city had fallen into the quiet hum of evening. The fluorescent glow from the pediatric wing was softened by the glass walls, and the halls were calmer now that visiting hours were nearly over. Lily was still in the chair beside Noah's crib, legs tucked under her and eyes half-lidded from exhaustion. She perked up when Ethan walked in. Did you find the box? She asked immediately. He nodded. We did, and we called your Aunt Clara. She's on her way here right now. She'll be here tonight. Lily's eyes widened. She's really coming? Like, tonight? Tonight, Ethan confirmed. She said she has a room ready for you and Noah. For the first time since he'd met her, Ethan saw the tension in Lily's shoulders loosen. Not completely, but enough that she leaned back in her chair and let out a breath. Mom said Aunt Clara makes the best peach pie. Marissa knelt beside her. When your aunt gets here, she'll be able to stay with you at the hospital. We'll work with the court to make sure you can be together while we find out more about your mom and dad. Lily frowned slightly. Did you find my dad yet? Not yet, Ethan admitted. But we have a lead. We'll keep looking. Noah stirred in his crib, tiny fists curling in his sleep. The steady beep of the monitor and the soft hiss of oxygen created a rhythm that felt almost like a lullaby. Ethan checked his watch. If Clara's on schedule, she'll be hitting the South Carolina border in about 3 hours. I'll arrange for an officer to meet her when she arrives in Asheville. At 11:47 p.m., Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from dispatch. Reynolds has arrived, escorting her to Mission now. 15 minutes later, he was waiting by the pediatric ICU doors when a woman in her early 40s came through, flanked by an APD officer. Clara Reynolds had chestnut brown hair pulled into a ponytail, jeans, and a soft flannel shirt. Her eyes, however, were what caught Ethan, tired but blazing with determination. "Officer Cole?" she asked, breathless from the long drive. "That's me. You made good time." "I didn't hit the brakes much," she said with a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Where are they?" He led her to the ICU room. Through the glass, Lily sat up straight, staring at the door as if she could sense her aunt was there. When Clara stepped inside, the little girl was out of her chair in an instant, arms wrapping tight around her waist. "Aunt Clara!" Lily's voice was muffled against her shirt. "You came!" "Of course I came, baby." Clara's voice broke, but she kept her arms strong around her niece. "And I'm not going anywhere." She crouched by the crib then, her hand brushing Noah's cheek gently. "Hey, little man. You've grown since the last picture I saw." Emily Rhodes appeared at the doorway, her expression softening. "You must be Ms. Reynolds. I'm Dr. Rhodes." "He's doing well, responding to treatment. Oxygen levels are steady. He'll need to stay here a few more days, but the prognosis is good." Clara nodded, her throat working as if to swallow both relief and grief at the same time. "Thank you, Doctor." Ethan stepped back, giving them space. This was the first real moment of safety these children had had in days, and it wasn't his to intrude upon. But even as the warmth of the reunion filled the room, he knew the fight ahead. With CPS procedures, possible court hearings, and the search for Sarah and Mark was far from over. Still, tonight was a victory. Tonight, the children had someone here who belonged to them. And in this line of work, those moments were worth holding on to. The morning after Clara arrived in Asheville, the pediatric ICU was unusually still. Outside the wide windows, the Blue Ridge Mountains were wrapped in a thin mist, their peaks fading into the pale dawn sky. Inside, Lily sat cross-legged in her chair beside Noah's crib, tracing shapes on the condensation of the glass wall with her finger. Clara was curled up in the corner armchair, an untouched cup of coffee cooling on the table beside her. Ethan stepped quietly into the room. "Morning," he said softly, nodding at Clara. She gave him a small smile. "He slept through the night. The nurses say his oxygen levels have stayed steady." "That's good news." He glanced at Lily. "Hey, kiddo. Can I talk to your aunt for a second?" Lily shrugged but kept her gaze on Noah. Ethan stepped into the hallway with Clara. "I'm heading to Greenville this morning," he told her. "We got confirmation from the shelter network. There's a Mark Parker registered at a men's shelter downtown. Fits the age and description we have. I want to talk to him before the court hearing." Clara's brow furrowed. "Do you think he knows where Sarah is?" "Maybe. Or maybe he's as in the dark as we are. Either way, if he's their legal father, we need to understand his situation before the judge makes any decisions." Clara folded her arms. looking past Ethan through the glass at Lily. "She still talks about him like he's a hero. I don't want her heart broken again." Ethan's voice was steady. "I can't promise it won't be, but I'll keep her safe from anything that could hurt her more." The drive to Greenville, South Carolina, took just under an hour and a half. Ethan kept the radio off, his mind replaying the last 24 hours. Clara's relief, Lily's shy smile, the faint but steady sound of Noah's breathing. He knew from experience that finding a missing parent could go in 100 directions. Some ended in reunions. Others didn't. The shelter was housed in a brick building wedged between a boarded-up laundromat and a discount furniture store. A small sign over the door read, "St. Matthew's Transitional Housing, Men's Unit." The entry smelled faintly of detergent and coffee, the kind brewed in industrial urns meant to last all day. A volunteer at the front desk checked Ethan's badge, then led him down a narrow hallway lined with closed doors. "He's in the lounge," the man said quietly. "Been keeping to himself mostly. Not trouble, just low." The lounge was a plain room with mismatched chairs, a TV in the corner playing a muted news channel, and a few men reading newspapers or staring into styrofoam cups. Ethan spotted him instantly, a man in his mid-30s, hair a shade darker than Lily's, wearing a faded work shirt with the name Mark stitched over the breast pocket. His shoulders were hunched, and there was a stillness about him that didn't come from rest, but from exhaustion. Ethan approached slowly. "Mark Parker?" The man looked up, his eyes cautious but clear. "Yeah, who's asking?" "Officer Ethan Cole, Asheville PD." "Mind if I sit?" Mark gestured to the chair across from him. "What's this about?" Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Your daughter, Lily, and your newborn son, Noah." Mark froze. They're in Asheville?" "They're safe," Ethan said. "They were found yesterday morning on Pinecrest Avenue. Lily was carrying Noah, collecting bottles. No adults around. He's been hospitalized, pneumonia, dehydration, malnutrition." Mark's hands clenched into fists on his knees. "God, I never—" He stopped, shaking his head. "I left them with Sarah. I was trying to get money to take them to her sister in Savannah. But the job I had lined up fell through. My truck broke down on the way back, and I couldn't face going home with nothing. Ended up here." "Why not call? Why not get someone to check on them?" Ethan asked. Mark's voice cracked. "Because I didn't have the money to fix anything. Not the truck, not the bills, not me. And I thought Sarah would be back before it mattered." Ethan studied him. There was no scent of alcohol, no twitchy restlessness that hinted at drugs. Just the heavy slump of someone pulled under by circumstance and maybe shame. "You're listed as their legal guardian along with Sarah," Ethan said. "That means CPS will want to evaluate your fitness to care for them. Right now, their aunt is in Asheville, ready to take temporary custody." Mark nodded slowly. "Clara. She's a good woman." His voice was low, but there was no fight in it. "If she can keep them together, let her. I'm not ready to be their dad again. Not until I can stand up without feeling like I'm going to fall over." Ethan let the words settle. "There's a counseling requirement if you want to be considered in the future. Job stability, housing, parenting classes. Are you willing to work toward that?" Mark met his gaze for the first time. "Yeah, I need to." For them. Back in Asheville, the hospital hallways seemed brighter after the dim light of the shelter. Ethan found Clara in the ICU, reading a picture book aloud to Lily while Noah slept. Lily looked up mid-sentence. "Did you find him?" "I did," Ethan said. He crouched beside her chair. "He's safe. He's in Greenville right now, getting help at a shelter." Did he say when he's coming back? Ethan hesitated. Not yet. He wants to get better first. Find a job, a home. He asked me to tell you he loves you and he's proud of you. Lily's face was unreadable for a moment. Then she nodded once and turned back to the picture book. Okay. Clara's eyes met Ethan's over the top of Lily's head, gratitude mixed with worry. They both knew the road ahead for Mark would be steep, and the court would weigh his absence heavily. But for now, the children had Clara, and that was something solid to stand on. As Ethan left the room, he thought about Mark's words, not ready to be their dad again. He'd seen men never come back from that kind of place. But he'd also seen some claw their way out. The next few months would tell which kind Mark Parker was. By the time Ethan stepped out of the elevator into the pediatric wing the next morning, the hospital's usual rhythm was already in motion. Nurses wheeled supply carts past the nurses' station. The scent of brewed coffee drifted faintly from the staff lounge, and the low murmur of voices carried from behind patient doors. Clara was in her usual spot by Noah's crib, one leg tucked under her as she spooned yogurt from a small container toward Lily, who sat, perched on the windowsill. Outside, the Blue Ridge Mountains were bathed in a crisp autumn light. For a brief moment, the room felt like it belonged to a family, not a ward in a hospital, not a holding space for lives in limbo. Ethan was about to step inside when his phone vibrated. It was dispatch. Cole, he answered. Unit 12, be advised. Sarah Parker is at the front desk asking for her children, the operator said. Ethan's eyes flicked instantly to Clara and Lily. How long ago did she arrive? Just now. Says she drove straight from Charlotte. I'm on my way, Ethan replied, slipping the phone back into his pocket. Sarah Parker was standing at the reception counter when Ethan reached the lobby. She was tall, with the same green eyes as Lily, though hers were dulled by exhaustion. Her dark blonde hair was pulled into a loose braid, strands falling across her face. She wore a denim jacket over a thin sweater, and her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. When she saw Ethan approach, she straightened. You're the one who has my kids. Ethan stopped a few feet from her, scanning her quickly. No visible injuries, no signs of intoxication, but her face was tight, defensive. I'm Officer Ethan Cole. I was the one who found Lily and Noah yesterday morning. Her voice wavered between anger and desperation. I left them at home because I had to work. I told Lily I'd be back in 2 days. It was 10, Ethan said evenly. No adults were with them. Your newborn was sick. Pneumonia, dehydration, malnutrition. They're in the ICU right now. Sarah's jaw clenched, and for a moment she looked like she might argue. Instead, her voice cracked. I didn't know it would take this long. The diner in Charlotte, they kept adding shifts. I couldn't just leave. You could have called, Ethan said, or arranged for someone to watch them. Her eyes dropped. I thought Mark was coming back sooner. Ethan exhaled slowly. Mark is in Greenville, at a shelter. He's not in a position to care for them right now. Sarah's head jerked up at that. A shelter? She blinked hard. I thought he was staying with a friend. He wasn't, Ethan said simply. When they stepped into the pediatric ICU, Clara's face went rigid. She stood quickly, moving instinctively between Lily and the door. Lily froze, yogurt spoon suspended in midair, her eyes darting to Ethan for explanation. Mom? Her voice was small, uncertain. Sarah's breath caught. Lily. She stepped forward, but Clara's hand came up slightly, not blocking, just slowing. You don't just walk in here after 10 days and grab them, Clara said firmly. Ethan positioned himself between them. Sarah, before you see them, you need to know. Child Protective Services has opened an investigation. Patricia Monroe from State CPS is on her way. She'll assess the situation and determine if your children can remain in your care. Sarah's face paled. You're saying they might take them from me? They'll determine what's safest for the kids, Ethan said. Patricia Monroe arrived 20 minutes later, striding in with a folder under her arm. She was in her early 50s, with the composed, precise manner of someone who had done this job for decades. She introduced herself to Sarah, then sat across from her at a small table in the family lounge adjacent to the ICU. Ms. Parker, I need to review the circumstances of your children being unsupervised. I also need to assess your current ability to provide for them. Sarah shifted in her seat. I left them at home because I didn't have childcare, and I needed money for gas to get to my sisters in Savannah. I was working double shifts in Charlotte. Patricia's pen moved steadily across her form. Do you have stable housing? Sarah hesitated. Not at the moment. I was staying in a friend's spare room while working. Patricia looked up, her expression unreadable. Do you have income beyond the diner job? Sarah shook her head. Patricia made a note, then closed the folder. Given the length of time the children were without adult supervision, the newborn's medical condition, and your current housing situation, CPS will be recommending temporary placement with a relative, specifically Clara Reynolds. You will be given a case plan to work toward reunification, which will include stable housing, verified income, and parenting classes. There will be a court hearing to formalize this. Sarah's face crumpled, but she didn't argue. Can I at least see them? Patricia nodded. Supervised visits will be allowed starting today. When Sarah stepped into the ICU room, Lily's eyes searched her face. Where were you? She asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. I was working so we could go to Aunt Clara's, Sarah said, kneeling in front of her. I didn't mean to be gone so long. You missed Noah's first sneeze, Lily said quietly. Then she looked away. Sarah swallowed hard, glancing at Clara, who stood silently by Noah's crib. I'll do whatever they say, she murmured. Just take care of them until I can. Clara's voice was steady. I will. Ethan watched the exchange from the doorway. The air was heavy, not with shouting, but with the quiet fallout of choices made under pressure. He'd seen enough fractured families to know that love alone wasn't always enough to hold them together. An hour later, Patricia met Ethan in the hallway. I'll file the emergency placement paperwork tonight. The hearing will be in Buncombe County Court within 48 hours. You'll be needed as a witness. Ethan nodded. I'll be there. Patricia glanced back toward the ICU. This could go either way in the long run, but right now, Clara's the safest bridge these kids have. Ethan thought of Lily's wary eyes, of Noah's tiny hand curling around Clara's finger, and of Sarah's bowed head. A bridge was exactly what they needed, one strong enough to carry them until the rest of their world was rebuilt. The courthouse in downtown Asheville loomed gray and solid against the morning sky, its stone facade catching the pale light that filtered through the clouds. The carved arch above the main entrance read Buncombe County Courthouse, the letters weathered but still sharp. Ethan stood on the granite steps for a moment before climbing them, his breath misting in the crisp air. It had been less than 48 hours since Patricia Monroe's recommendation to place Lily and Noah in Clara's temporary custody, and yet the pace of events had been relentless. Paperwork, medical updates, supervised visits between Sarah and the children, every moment edged toward this morning's hearing. Inside, the lobby hummed with activity. Lawyers in dark suits moved quickly through the metal detectors, clutching folders and rolling briefcases. The air carried the faint scent of old paper and floor polish. Ethan signed in at the security desk, then made his way to courtroom 3B, where Judge Ellen Hargrave presided over family cases. Marissa was already there, seated in the row behind the long wooden counsel tables. She was reviewing her CPS notes, her pen tapping softly against the folder. Clara sat beside her, wearing a navy cardigan over a simple blouse, her hair neatly tied back. The calm in her posture was undercut by the way her hands gripped the strap of her purse. Across the aisle, Sarah sat with a court-appointed attorney. She wore a clean sweater and jeans, her braid neater than when Ethan had first seen her in the hospital, but the shadows under her eyes told the story of sleepless nights. She kept glancing toward the door, as if half hoping her children would walk in. They did, escorted by a CPS aide. Lily held Clara's hand while the aide pushed Noah in a stroller. The little boy's cheeks had regained some color, and his breathing was quiet and steady. Lily wore a pale yellow dress that Clara had bought her the day before, her hair brushed smooth. She spotted Ethan immediately and gave him a small, shy wave. "Good morning, everyone," Judge Hargrave said as she took the bench. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled into a bun and reading glasses perched low on her nose. "This is the matter of temporary custody for minors Lily Parker, age 6, and Noah Parker, age 2 weeks. Appearances for the record?" Patricia introduced herself for CPS, Marissa followed, then Clara's attorney, then Sarah's. Ethan was called as a witness for the facts of the initial incident. Patricia began. "Your Honor, CPS is recommending that the minors be placed in the temporary custody of their maternal aunt, Clara Reynolds, for a period of 6 months. The mother, Sarah Parker, left the children without adult supervision for approximately 10 days. The infant was found in medical distress, diagnosed with pneumonia, dehydration, and malnutrition, requiring ICU admission. The father, Mark Parker, is currently residing at a shelter in Greenville, South Carolina, and is not in a position to assume care." Sarah's attorney rose. "Your Honor, Ms. Parker acknowledges the lapse in judgment, but emphasizes that her intent was never to abandon her children. She was working to secure funds to relocate them to her sister's care in Savannah. She requests the opportunity to retain custody under supervision." Judge Hargrave nodded. "We'll hear testimony. Officer Cole?" Ethan stepped to the witness stand, took the oath, and sat. He recounted the events of that morning on Pinecrest Avenue, how he'd found Lily collecting bottles with Noah strapped to her chest, how she'd begged him not to take her brother away, the medical signs he observed, the immediate transport to Mission Hospital. He kept his tone factual, but his voice softened when describing Lily's condition, her thin frame, her watchful eyes, her determination to protect her brother. Sarah's attorney cross-examined. "Officer Cole, did Ms. Parker's home show signs of deliberate neglect?" Ethan shook his head. The home on Hawthorne Street had been repossessed by the bank. The children were not inside. The only evidence of planning was a tin box hidden under the porch step containing a letter from Ms. Parker with instructions to contact their aunt if she could not return. The judge made a note, her brow furrowed. Next, Dr. Emily Rhodes testified via video from the hospital, confirming Noah's medical condition on admission and his improvement under care. The infant's pneumonia was early stage but could have progressed rapidly without intervention. Both children were underweight for their age, suggesting insufficient caloric intake during the period in question. Finally, Patricia outlined the proposed case plan for Sarah: obtain stable housing, secure verifiable employment, attend parenting classes, and complete regular supervised visits. For Mark, the plan included counseling, job training, and substance use evaluation, though there was no current evidence of abuse, just instability. Then came the moment everyone seemed to hold their breath for: Lily's testimony. She was sworn in, her feet swinging above the floor as she sat in the witness chair. Her voice was small but clear. "I tried to take care of Noah. I gave him my bread. I kept him warm with my hoodie." "And how did you feel when Officer Cole found you?" Patricia asked gently. Lily's eyes flicked to Ethan. "Scared, but also a little less scared than before." The judge leaned forward slightly. "Lily, where do you want to stay while your mom and dad get ready to take care of you again?" Lily glanced back at Clara, then at her mother. I want to be with Aunt Clara. She has a room for me. And peach pie. Her lip trembled, but she kept going. But I still want to see Mom and Dad? The room went very still. Even Sarah's attorney didn't interrupt. Judge Hargrave folded her hands. Thank you, Lily. You've been very brave. After a short recess, everyone reconvened for the ruling. The judge's voice was calm but firm. Based on the testimony and evidence presented, I am granting temporary custody of Lily and Noah Parker to their maternal aunt, Clara Reynolds, for a period of 6 months. The parents will have supervised visitation rights, contingent on progress in their respective case plans. CPS will provide monthly reports to the court. Sarah bowed her head, relief and disappointment mingling in her expression. Clara's grip on her purse strap loosened as she exhaled a long, steady breath. Court is adjourned, Judge Hargrave said, striking the gavel once. In the hallway outside, Lily ran to Clara and wrapped her arms around her waist. Does this mean we're still a family? She asked. Clara knelt, her voice thick. Yes, honey. Just a family that's learning. Ethan stood nearby, watching as Sarah approached slowly. She crouched to meet Lily's eyes. I'm going to work really hard so you can come home to me. Can you believe that? Lily nodded solemnly. Okay, but you have to call every day. I will, Sarah promised. As the group began to disperse, Clara with the children, Sarah with her attorney, Patricia on the phone with the CPS office, Ethan felt a rare flicker of optimism. This wasn't the end, but it was a start. And in family court, sometimes that was the most you could ask for. The first weeks after the court ruling felt like the slow exhale after a long, tense breath. Clara's small, craftsman-style home on the outskirts of Asheville became the children's anchor. Warm, yellow light spilling from its windows at dusk, the scent of fresh bread or peach pie often drifting from the kitchen. It wasn't perfect. Clara was quick to remind herself of that, but it was steady. And for Lily and Noah, steady was a new kind of luxury. The first morning in her new room, Lily woke to the sound of rain pattering gently on the tin roof. Clara had painted the walls a soft lavender and placed a handmade quilt at the foot of the bed. A small bookshelf stood in the corner, half filled with picture books and coloring supplies. Noah's bassinet sat just a few steps away, close enough that Lily could check on him during the night. She padded into the kitchen in her socks, rubbing her eyes. Clara was at the stove, whisking eggs. Morning, sunshine, she said. Lily climbed onto one of the counter stools. Do we still go to the hospital today? Just for Noah's follow-up, Clara replied. Dr. Rhodes wants to make sure his lungs are clear, and we'll stop by the park afterward. Lily nodded, her face thoughtful. Can we call Mom after? Yes, Clara said gently. Every afternoon, just like the court said. The calls were sometimes awkward. Sarah's voice over the speakerphone was warm, but there were pauses, spaces where neither side seemed to know what to say. Noah would coo or fuss, and Sarah would say, I wish I could hold you right now, her voice catching. Lily would talk about school or what she'd drawn that day, careful not to mention too much about Clara's house. Ethan checked in often, stopping by in uniform or calling from his patrol car. He'd ask Lily about school, about Noah's appetite, about whether Clara needed anything. The case might have been in CPS's hands now, but Ethan clearly wasn't letting go of the thread. Midway through the first month, Clara invited Marissa over for dinner to review the children's progress. Noah had gained weight and was sleeping in longer stretches. Lily had started attending a small elementary school nearby, walking in each morning with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Marissa leafed through her notes after the meal. Clara, you're hitting all the targets. Medical care, stable housing, school enrollment. The visits with Sarah have been consistent, though she's still looking for permanent work. How's Mark doing? Clara asked. He's attending counseling at the shelter and just completed a job training program, Marissa said. But he's not ready to petition for custody yet. Lily was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug, coloring. She looked up. Will we all live together someday? Mom, Dad, me, and Noah? Marissa chose her words carefully. That's something the court will decide when it's safe. Right now, you're with Aunt Clara, and that's a good thing. Lily looked at Clara, who gave her a reassuring smile. Families come together in lots of ways, honey. What matters is we're taking care of each other now. By the third month, the routine had become almost comfortable. Lily's teacher sent home notes praising her reading progress. Noah was sitting up with support, grinning his toothless smile at anyone who made eye contact. Still, there were moments of ache. Lily sometimes lingered by the window after phone calls with her mother, watching the street as if Sarah might pull up in a car. Clara kept her busy, baking cookies, planting bulbs in the garden, but she knew the waiting was part of the process. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan stopped by off-duty, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. He brought a soccer ball for Lily and spent an hour kicking it back and forth with her in the yard while Noah napped. Clara watched from the porch, grateful for the easy laughter drifting up from the grass. In the 5th month, the family gathered for Thanksgiving at Clara's. Sarah came for a supervised visit, bringing a pumpkin pie she'd baked herself. The meal was warm and full, but the undercurrent of the custody case lingered, every laugh touched with the knowledge that decisions were still ahead. After dinner, Sarah knelt by Lily's chair. I'm almost there, she said softly. I've got a steady job now, and I'm saving for a place of our own. Lily looked from her mother to Clara, then simply said, Okay, I like living here, but I'll come if you're ready. It was a child's truth, simple, direct, and heavy, with the awareness that ready was more than just a word. The 6th month arrived with the first hints of spring in the air. Daffodils pushed up through the soil in Clara's garden, and the court date for review was set. Marissa visited once more to prepare her report. You've built a stable environment here, she told Clara. The kids are thriving. That will weigh heavily in the judge's decision. That night, after Lily and Noah were asleep, Clara sat at the kitchen table with Ethan. I want what's best for them, she said. If that means going back to Sarah, I'll support it. But if they're not ready, Ethan nodded. Then you keep being the bridge. Clara looked toward the closed bedroom door where the children slept. A bridge can be strong, she said, but sometimes it starts to feel like home. The air in Savannah carried a different kind of warmth, a softness that wrapped around you the moment you stepped out of the car. It was late April now, and the magnolia trees along Clara's street were heavy with blooms, their creamy petals spilling scent into the breeze. Spanish moss draped from the oaks like lace, swaying gently above the quiet, brick-lined sidewalks. Ethan pulled his cruiser to the curb outside Clara's house, not in uniform today, but in a simple shirt and slacks. It felt strange to be here off-duty, but this wasn't an official visit. Today was about something else entirely. The porch of Clara's old white house was wide and shaded, with a swing at one end and wicker chairs lined up to face the street. The steps had been freshly painted, and bright geraniums bloomed in pots on either side of the doorway. This was the porch Lily had heard about in her mother's stories, the one with summer pies cooling on the railing and a breeze you could feel even on the hottest days. Clara was already on the swing, rocking slowly. Beside her, Lily sat cross-legged, wearing a pale blue sundress. Noah was in a playpen nearby, a chubby, laughing bundle who no longer needed the constant oxygen or careful monitoring of those early days. You made it, Clara said, smiling as Ethan stepped onto the porch. Wouldn't miss it, he replied. How's everyone holding up? Lily grinned. We're good. Aunt Clara taught me how to make pie crust without tearing it. She leaned forward conspiratorially. But mine still looks like a map. Ethan laughed. A very tasty map, I'm sure. Inside, the kitchen was a flurry of gentle chaos. Sarah was at the counter, wearing an apron over a simple cotton dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. The tension in her face had eased since those first days at the hospital. She looked healthier, grounded. She turned when Ethan came in. "Hi," she said, her voice steady. "I wanted to thank you for everything." "You did your part too," Ethan said. "You worked the plan. That's not easy." Sarah nodded, glancing toward the doorway where Lily's laughter floated in from outside. "It was worth it. Every bit of it." The court's decision had come just 2 weeks earlier. After 6 months of documented stability from Clara, consistent progress from Sarah, and regular reports from CPS, Judge Hargrave had approved a shared arrangement. Sarah would have primary custody, but Clara would remain a legal guardian and active part of the children's lives. It wasn't the traditional ending most families pictured, but for this one, it fit. Mark had chosen not to petition yet, still working his program in Greenville. He sent letters every week, ones Clara read aloud to Lily and tucked away in a box for when Noah was old enough to understand. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of coral and gold, everyone gathered on the porch. Clara brought out a tray with iced tea and slices of peach pie, the crusts golden and flaky. The air hummed with cicadas, and somewhere down the street a radio played faintly from an open window. Lily sat between her mother and Clara on the swing, Noah cradled in Sarah's arms. Ethan took a chair opposite them, feeling for the first time in months like he was watching a story shift from survival to living. "Remember the first night in Asheville?" Clara asked, smiling at Lily. "You wouldn't let go of Noah for even a second." Lily shrugged, a shy grin tugging at her mouth. "I thought someone might take him." She glanced at Sarah. "But now, I know he's safe." Sarah kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Because we're all here." Ethan caught Clara's eye over the rim of his glass. There was a quiet understanding there, that what they'd built wasn't just a temporary fix. This was a new kind of family, one held together not by perfect circumstances, but by choice, effort, and a stubborn refusal to give up. As twilight settled, fireflies began to blink in the yard, their tiny lights weaving through the air. Lily chased them barefoot on the grass, her laughter carrying in the warm night. Clara leaned back in her chair, Noah now dozing in her lap, and Sarah sat beside her, their shoulders touching in an unspoken truce. Ethan stood after a while, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I should get going," he said. "You'll come back, though," Lily called from the yard, holding up her cupped hands to show a single glowing firefly. "Count on it," Ethan replied. Before he left, Ethan paused at the gate, turning back to look at the porch. The scene framed there, the women talking quietly, the baby safe in their care, the little girl chasing light in the dark, wasn't the ending he'd imagined when he found Lily on Pinecrest Avenue all those months ago. It was better. It wasn't about erasing what had happened. It was about making something whole from what was left. About giving those children a place where the word home meant more than a roof. And here, on this porch in Savannah, it was clear they had found it. From that cold morning on Pinecrest Avenue to the warm sunset on a Savannah porch, Lily, Noah, Sarah, and Clara's journey wasn't just about finding each other again. It was proof that family isn't always perfect, but love and persistence can mend even the deepest cracks. We've watched a 6-year-old protect her baby brother with all her strength. An aunt put her own life on hold to be a bridge for her niece and nephew. A mother learn how to start over. And a police officer who believed no encounter is ever truly by chance. This story reminds us that sometimes the smallest moments, a hug, A promise, a simple dinner, can build the truest meaning of home in someone's heart. And when we dare to show love, good things will find their way to us, no matter how hard the past has been. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you believe warm, healing stories like this deserve to be shared, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next journey. I can't wait to share the next story with you.